Newcastle United lose 2-1 to Crystal Palace, putting doubts around Eddie Howe even higher in the public eye. And with managers and candidates coming out of every nook and cranny, we look at Eddie Howe's tenure as well as recent results and put them under review. Let's find out right here on Toon Tactics TV, folks.
Brilliant from Shea, and now Murphy can take on the shot. Fabian Shea
All right, folks. Always a blessing, always an incredible pleasure to be on here with you. And for those of you that might have been here at 9 o'clock, apologies, I didn't change and reschedule the shift. The shift. I was going to say shift. The show for 10 p.m. But thank you if you've come back at 10 p.m. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for all the folks on here already. God bless you already. Good to see folks in the chat. Good to see my man Ches here as well. God bless you. Good to see James and Adrian and everybody else. I'm going to get to the chats in a moment. But as always, folks, always a blessing to be talking to you to you guys tonight. Let me know if you guys enjoy the Champions League, watching PSG and Liverpool, watching PSG win. Look, losing to PSG at home, it couldn't be my club, is all I can say. Losing to Crystal Palace away, yeah, that could be my club for sure. So we'll be talking about that. But I'm super excited on tonight's show. We are going to be obviously not previewing, reacting to the Crystal Palace game. As always, you guys know that I've got tons of stuff I want to talk to. So we're not going to hang too much about it, only because the stuff with the Crystal Palace game is going to bleed into the next part of the show, where we're going to be talking about Eddie Howe. We're going to be talking about, obviously, going to match him up to the recent calls for Iraola, only because, not only is it because it's big news, but also I want to know more about what fans think about, obviously, Eddie Howe in, Eddie Howe out, but a bit more deeper in terms of also like the potential candidates, more than just is it kind of me when I was looking at Areola, I wanted to know if he was hired today or in the summer, whenever it is. What's the thinking behind it? Why? Essentially, I want to go a little bit more deeper than rather than than maybe some of the stuff that we're kind of listening to. I wanted to know why. I want to know why and what it could lead to. So when we're talking about that, and God willing, we have enough time, I've got a really, really good scouting report on potential goalkeepers that could take over from Nick Pope. I nearly called Nick Hope. So looking forward to that, as well as other news. And unfortunately, our man Mitch couldn't be on here tonight, but we're really blessed to have a special guest that's going to come back onto the channel a little bit later in the show. So do look out for that. So good to see Ches. God bless you. Says, hi, Philip, mate. Hope you're well. Hope you're doing well, Ches. Let me know how you feel about that Crystal Palace result. Ches says, Philip, just a reminder about your WhatsApp ID. Yes, folks, I was saying, and thank you for reminding me, Ches. I was saying in the last show, because I know sometimes notifications of the show people aren't always aware of it, even though you're subscribed, which is terribly frustrating for me, and I'm sure it's frustrating for you, because especially people are missing the live show. So I was thinking, look, I could set up a WhatsApp group for folks and to notify you on it. We can also talk on the WhatsApp, and maybe there'll be things that you want to talk about on the show as well, and everything else. So do let me know if you guys will be up for that. If you are, then I'll go and set up a WhatsApp group, a Toon Tactics TV WhatsApp group for you guys to come on. Thank you for that, reminding me of that, Ches. James says, all right, mate, Phil, if you're not too off about everything, mainly for me, it's the players show no quality and no winning quality. I'm not too annoyed if you, James, if like not at you guys. I hope you're not saying that at you guys. Like, I'm not annoyed at you guys, anything like that. I was disappointed about the result for sure, but yes, for me it's the player quality and the winning quality. Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I'm going to talk about the game as well. But good to see James. James says my only issue is paying manager in the Premier League might be extremely expensive, even if they choose to resign. I think if there is a manager that you think is worthy of doing that for, then I think the long term impacts will far outweigh the short term like cost. I think hopefully, unless obviously it affects our SCR. I think anyway. But let's get into it. I want to do those highlights. I wanted to go through the game. I'll let you guys know. I didn't get to see the second half of the game, so I'm relying upon you guys. I went to church. I was in the second half because I missed it, and I haven't seen the full game just yet. So I really have a first half perspective as well as obviously some of the highlights. Obviously, the highlights I'm going to show from the game itself. I'm going to have a quick look overview of the game itself, and then some of the highlights because there's something from the highlights that I want that leads me off to discuss something else shortly as well. But I'm kind of led. Well, I am led by you guys quite a bit actually. So I'm relying on you guys to give me the game and your thoughts as a whole, right? Because my overall take, my overall view coming from the first half and the clips of make sure I got it here. Excuse me. And the clips, sorry guys. Can you guys see that? Yes, you can. Yeah, so clips and stats and everything else. I'm not going to hang out on the claps because I wanted to look at the highlights. So the first half was a nervy event for me, mainly from Newcastle's perspective. It was an away game. Very, very interesting. We're going to talk about this. Very, very interesting, by the way, that Usola started over Wissa and Voltemada. What is your guys' thoughts about that? I think I had Voltemada starting, right? Because my assumption was this, folks, right? And from the show, you guys will know this. My assumption was this: that Voltemada got back from Germany, for playing for Germany, and went straight into training, right? And was at training at Newcastle for the next 8-9 days. Now, this is only rumor, and if you've got information to support otherwise, or anybody knows anybody else, do let me know. From what I've seen online, is that he didn't necessarily return back to training straight away. He went on holiday, essentially for a short break. So, if that is true, and this is speculative, if that is true, I'm worried about his attitude because if you really want to start, if you want to be the club's number 9, you would come back, you would allow Eddie Howe to spend that extra 8-9 days with you to show you how to move in the box and how to be a box striker. Because we're going to show what Osola did for his goal, which was move like a box striker. Everything that we've been talking about before. So we're going to mention that in a moment. We did get Miley midfield, which is what I wanted, and obviously some news today about PSG being linked to Miley. And watching PSG today, I'm not surprised they want Miley, and I think Fabian Ruiz is going to leave. So they're looking at that, but after this, we cannot sell Miley. But anyway, the midfield is pretty much what I wanted, apart from Ramsey, because I would have wanted Ramsey to start. We've got Joe Linton, Tonali, and Miley, with Murphy on the right. And God bless Murphy, but it's time for us to move on from Murphy. I was always worried about the pitch being small for us in terms of how we played when we played with Crystal Palace. So I wanted the kind of Ramsey midfield. We had Miley in that, but I'm looking at Gordon. It's a bit more difficult for him to be in the game with the pitch that small, but fine, whatever. But we had the backline that I wanted as well. Either way, the stats were obviously the overall stats for the game. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where's the overall stats for the game? There's the head-to-head. There's the table. Where's the stats? I'm on FotMob. It usually has the tab that says stats on it. Come on. So I was saying the first half was nervy, This is annoying. Where are you? Where is the stats for this? The first half was nervy, but I was impressed by the goal, which I'll show in a little bit because I wanted to look at the stats real quick. But for some reason, guys, it was there's a, when you're looking at there's the game. Okay, here we go. Sorry, there you go. So I wanted to have a quick overview of the stats before I looked into the game itself. All right, so here we go. XG. So yeah, like 2.56 to Crystal Palace. So if you're just looking at kind of creating opportunities and goals overall, they deserved it in the end. 1-13 to us. 11. They dominated the shots on goal, shots on target, big chances created. All went to them. Fouls, corners. What's disappointing is that they just played in Europe. They got a smaller squad than us, and they came back. And there's a couple of things that's worrying about it. But before I go on, actually, we did have our guest. He's gone off now. I'll get back to him in a moment. But we got shots on. So shots on target. They had 9 inside of our box. We had 5 inside of theirs. Frustrating. They hit the woodwork as well. Obviously, it's so frustrating because duels, they won the more duels. Ground duels, they won the more ground duels. And this is a team that just played 2-3 days earlier. So I really am disappointed personally in terms of those kind of stats for a team in Palace. Like I said, they've got a smaller squad than us, played 2-3 days earlier, and yet they have the dominating stats that I think a team who hasn't played for a bit, even though some have gone internationals, and yet we've kind of produced this. Now, let me know your guys' thoughts on that. I want to get to the highlight because I want to see I want to speak a little bit about Sol's goal before we get to the Palace's goals and we move on. But let me first find where we are at, and because there's something I've been talking about. Because I mentioned Voldemort a little bit earlier. And what I wanted to see, and this goal from Osola defines it for me. So let me share this instead. Before we get into it, let's welcome our guest. It was phenomenal in the previous show. You guys really, really enjoyed having him. I really, really enjoyed having him. Cool, calm, measured. Proper, great analyst, proper fan, Geordie through and through. Let's welcome Tim to the show. How you doing, sir?
Hiya, Philip. Really good to be on. Thanks for having us and inviting us. And I'm flattered by that intro, mate. I appreciate your kind words.
Do you know what? And I forgot to mention this, folks. Yeah, like literally 10 minutes before the show started. Obviously, I told him about the show, and he made himself available. So, Tim, special thank you for your availability. Become literally not even the last hour, the last 10-15 minutes for making yourself available. Tim, I'm about to go into the highlights of the goals for the game, but I was saying to the folks earlier, I didn't get to see the second half. I was in church. I want to get your perspective in terms of the game as a whole, your feelings going into the game before that, your thoughts, what you were hoping would happen, and then kind of your view of the game as a whole, top to bottom, essentially. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know your feelings.
Well, before the game, we had this 2-week break, didn't we? So what I was hoping for was for Eddie Howe to himself come back a bit refreshed. And I appreciate, that he didn't have the players necessarily at his disposal during the 2-week break, because obviously a lot of them were away on international duty. But Eddie Howe still had that time to think about things himself with his coaching team around, okay, it hasn't been going well. What else can we do? What can we improve? What can we do differently? So I was hoping to see a response, to the Sunderland game, which obviously was a disaster. And yeah, I mean, I saw the team sheet, and I wasn't too chuffed with that team sheet. We'll come on to the details, and obviously Asula, because he was the big one, wasn't he, up front?
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, Philip, like I was hoping to see a spark. I was hoping to see improvements, but part of me, definitely since that Sunderland game as well, has been a bit resigned for the rest of the season. And I did have a feeling that it may well peter out, it may well fizzle out. And this really was the last chance, in terms of getting momentum for the last few games that are remaining. And yeah, the performance came along, and I thought it was a performance that could have been right out the catalogue of on the back of a European game. You would have thought we'd played 3 or 4 days earlier. We didn't look fresh. We looked tired. We looked stale. And we were playing a side who'd rested their best players, with one eye on the game midweek. So, it was just really disappointing. And I was, by the end, quite apathetic, really. And we can go into more detail around the bigger picture as to why I was apathetic. But yeah, I just think there was too many poor performances, not enough drive, not enough energy. Eddie Howe asked for energy at the start. He picked a side that he thought would be energetic with legs. Again, we can go into more detail around the team selection because I didn't agree with some of it. And yeah, he didn't even get that. He didn't even get the energy, really, in my opinion. So it's just really disappointing. And it really sets up the last 6 games in a poor manner where things could go from bad to worse, couldn't they? So it's disappointing.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. I don't know if you heard. I don't want to give into rumor and stuff like that, but we've got to talk about something because online. I don't know. I was hearing that part of the reason why, for instance, both actually Voldemort and Wissa, but Voldemort didn't start because after his adventures in Germany, he went on holiday. Okay. Wissa didn't start because he also delayed after going international Congo and came back late. I think Wissa's checked out personally. If that were true, Tim, like we'll speculate for a moment. Like, if that were true, first of all, it's not a surprise that Osola starts because the guy that's actually in training, right, right, is going to be the guy that's showing the hunger to be there. I was saying, if that is true, my concern would be around Voltemar's attitude with that. And what I was actually going to go into the show and say is, I was worried that Nagelsmann was going to get into Voltemar's ear because I don't know if obviously you saw the quotes from Nagelsmann saying, well, he's playing essentially, like I'm paraphrasing here, somewhere along the lines of, he's having to play deeper, this, that, and the other, right? And my worry from that is, and we're going to talk about actually box movement in the moment, right? His big thing was, well, he's playing deeper, what do you expect from him? And my worry was, Nagelsmann, are you watching Voltemada playing for Newcastle when he does play up front? And the concern around my concern anyway, and those that are watching him around his actual box movement. I'm going to explain. I'm going to show not only Osola's box movement, but I'm going to give a small example of Lewandowski. I knew I was going to do this, Tim, but I said to myself, I've got to make this review quick because there's so much other stuff I want to show. But I feel I'm going to go into one anyway. So. I was worried that Nagelsmann I'm worried that essentially I just wanted when I predicted the lineups for the show, Tim, I had Voltemada starting because I just thought, okay, you're going the minute your internationals is finished, you're gonna go hop on that plane, you head into Tyneside, You might get a day or two rest because obviously you've been away, but you're going to get straight back into training. You're going to let Eddie Howe, you and Eddie Howe are going to, it's one-on-one. That's what I assume happened. But it doesn't look like it's happened. If that story is true, Tim, like, what's your kind of feelings about it? And where are you at with Voldemort and Wissa and two of our strikers, ones and twos, on bench, while our third striker, Solo, who we were literally this close to selling, starts for us. What's your thought? Because I now expect Solo to start against Bournemouth.
Yeah,
as well.
Well, yeah. The thing is that on the one hand, if that is true, then I understand the premise that Eddie Howe is going with the player who, like you say, has been training all week and probably training very well. And he is maybe sticking, Eddie Howe that is, to his principles of, I want to play players who've been busting the gut in training. So on the one hand, I kind of get that. But I think you've also got to consider the circumstances where we are as a whole. And I think for me, I was thinking before the game, let's just bite the bullet. Let's play both of them up front. And again, we can go into this in a bit more detail because you're going to talk about Voldemort's movement in the box. I think I would be coming back in that I wouldn't play Voldemort on his own either. If there's going to be a lone striker, then Asuli might well be the better bet in some games. But I think for me, Voldemort should be playing. We should try to play Voldemort in a 10 behind another striker. And I was thinking that other striker, you could just play Wissa because there's 7 games left. I know you can't treat it as an experiment, but this is a unique situation. And we have paid a lot of money for these strikers. We need to find out if we can get them into a rhythm, if we can get them into the team whereby they can contribute to us in the here and now, but also next season. And also in terms of, you could say, but we haven't got time to experiment, quote experiment. What we've been doing beforehand has not been giving us points. And I know you could say Asula's, another, was the answer, if you like. But like you say, Philip, Asula is a player that Eddie Howe was happy to let go at the start of the season. So if Asula is the answer, is Eddie Howe really saying that he's going to be here next season and going to be spearheading our attack as the first choice striker or even second choice striker? I don't think he is. So I think you've got Voldemort for a reason. You've got Wissa for a reason. You thought they were really good players. I don't see why you can do such a blunt U-turn whereby, 7 months later, you deem that they are not good enough to be playing ahead of the striker that you wanted to ship out. And I know I'm contradicting myself in that, in one sense, in that Asula did do well. I thought he was our best spark in the game and obviously scored a good goal with improvisation. But I think, again, it goes back to what I was saying with trying something new. Eddie Howe with 2 weeks away to rethink how to tackle these last 7 games. The elephant in the living room, I've said a million times with Voldemort, for me, is we've tried him centre midfield in a 3. We've tried him up front on his own. The obvious answer is to try him number 10 with a striker. Why? I don't understand why you would go the whole season without even trying that in terms of putting 2 or 3 games together with that. So I think that's just, I think it's a bit baffling. And I think ultimately, we've bought Voldemort with a view of trying to shoehorn him into the same role that Isak was doing. And clearly he's not going to be able to do that. So I think Eddie Howe is trying to persist with the 4-3-3 and ignore the option of a, you can call it 4-2-3-1, you can call it 4-4-2. To me, it's the same kind of thing. So yeah, and I think if Voldemort has went away and Eddie Howe's a bit like, not too chuffed with that, I wanted you back on Tyneside. I think I get that, I really do. But like you say, I think you've got to come back to the situation we find ourselves in. And Eddie Howe himself, he needs to get something going. He needs to come up with solutions. So I would have bit the bullet. Fair enough with Wissa. If Eddie Howe thinks his Wissa is checked out completely, I understand that's a dilemma. And maybe you've got to hold off on rewarding that and not rewarding that. But I think with Voltemade, you've got with one of them at least. I think you had to bring them into the side and try and incorporate them against Crystal Palace to try and get something going and play Anthony Gordon, for example, or Sula as he did in front of Voltemade. And then you can say, I'm really going to try and come up with solutions here. To me, the same old, where Sula was isolated at times. It just is an indictment that I say with a heavy heart because I've got massive respect for Eddie Howe and I always will. But it's just an indictment that I think he hasn't got enough answers at the moment.
Thanks, Tim. That's a lot of folks who are kind of agreeing with what you're saying there in the comments as well. Raymond, there's a couple other people that were talking about also the game. We're going to show the highlights, but I thought Raymond mentioned Howard. I think you're saying, Raymond, hi to Philip, how are you? And Tim, how are you? Zabi Alonso pointers. You know the way you always say things, Raymond? It makes it sound, I think you said something last show and it made it sound like it's happened. I forgot what it was. The way you say things, you're making it sound like Xabi Alonso has been appointed today. If that's happened, I have to change the whole schedule of the show. So I don't think that's happened. But I see what you're saying. I'm actually going to talk about Xabi Alonso and other managers. But there's a main manager I'm going to talk about in a moment. Matt Lou, good to see you. God bless you. All from South Africa. Matt Lou says Eddie doesn't like technical players, creative players, but at the same time, he can't seem to be able to set up the team for attacking. I disagree a little bit in terms of technical players because Bruno Gomes, Miley, Botman, Ramsey are all technical players. Tonali are all technical players. I think I get what you're saying. Maybe you mean like a flary technical players, like a Verts. Maybe I think that's what you're heading to, Matt Lou.
Just very quickly on that. Just very quickly.
Yeah.
To that point, for me, Ramsey was the one to play in this game. You're playing Crystal Palace, who of 5 at the back. They yes, they're pressed in the first 10 minutes or so, but they're not going to go gun-ho against us. They're not going to give us loads of space. So to me, Ramsey was the one again to come into this game. Joe Linton's going to get a yellow card and be suspended for 2 games. You're running that risk as well. Joe Linton is more suited to the likes of Bournemouth, Arsenal away, more physical games, I think. So again, I think from Eddie Howe's point of view, it seems like if Joe Linton is fit, he plays. Forget the fixture in front of you. Forget what's best for that game. And that's where I think Eddie Howe, he's wedded to certain things, whether it's formation, whether it's playing particular players. And I really like Jacob Ramsey. I think he is a good technical player. And I think in tight spaces, he's better than Joe Linton. And I think he can carve out chances better than Joe Linton. And in a game like this, he could support the attack better than Joe Linton. So again, I'm a bit baffled as to why you've paid 40 million for Ramsey and not wanting him start him in a game like this.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I'm going to get to the comments of this. God bless everyone that's making so many comments as well, adding to the show. I want to go to the highlights in a moment, and I'll get back to you. But I want to acknowledge. I see Connor. Good to see you, Connor. God bless you. Ginger Hoskins. Always a pleasure to see you come on when you're here on the show. God bless you. Contemplate as well. Good to see you, sir. Lion Point. There was somebody else. I feel like I've missed somebody, but. Guys, I just want to let you know that I can see your comments as well. But I just want to be able to, I want to get into something in terms of a specific point around movement. Now, this is a slight example of what I mean. And unless, it's a shame I haven't kept the highlights from Voltemade, but it was from folks that remember, I did a review when we played away to Wolves. And the lack of movement Mr. Voltemade was showing there. And I don't think it's not because he doesn't want to. I just don't think he knows. I just don't think he has it in his armory just yet. So I'm gonna show an example of what Osola has done here and what I want to see him do. I'm gonna double on it a little bit now, but then showing somebody that's a little bit better than Osola. I'm gonna show Lewandowski. I'm gonna show a little bit of, and why it's helpful is because. No, he's not the exact same profile as Voltemade because Voltemade is so tall. But the point is, he is tall. He's athletic as well and technically good. So it's not too dissimilar profile. Now, here you're gonna see this is the goal, right? You're gonna see on the far right a little triangle between Murphy, Miley, and I forgot the third person. I think it's Livramento. Miley eventually crosses the ball in. Now, at the beginning of this move, you're going to see Osuna just on the outside of the box here, and he's trying to be on the shoulder of their number 5. I think it's Lacroix. He's keeping Lacroix just behind him, and I think next to Lacroix, I forgot who the second player is. I think it's Richards. Now, Richards obviously can see Osuna right in front of him, but he has to be aware of Gordon, so he has to be patient here. It's not Richards. I don't know who the next player is. But you're going to see Osuna on the shoulder of the number 5 here, and he's trying to even just be beyond his eye vision. The key is for him to get into that space between the goalkeeper and the number 5. That's the danger zone. Everybody's aware of that. The defense are aware of that. The forwards are aware of that. It's about how you get that. If Osuna stands in front of the number 5, it makes it very easy, right? Or if he just gets in a physical battle, it makes it very easy. But he keeps himself separate. He keeps himself just behind him here. And they're waiting for the ball to play him, but it's all about position at the moment. He still sticks in. Number 5 looks at him again. He looks at him once. You can see him. He tries to back in. It's because he can see where Osuna is. They know that the race is on between the goalkeeper. Just remember that space here between the goalkeeper and the number 5. They're both expecting the ball to get in here. They know it. The people in the stadium know it. Their grandmothers know it. Everything. That's that space, right? It's about how you get into it. And he keeps on the shoulder here. He looks at Osuna again. He looks at, he's just waiting for that run. That ball is going to come in eventually. Tonali's about to lay it off to Miley, but he stays on his shoulder, and there's a constant movement in terms of what's happening from Osuna. And I want to also add to this point. When we started this, Osuna started off where? On the outside of the penalty box. But just from his movement alone, staying on the periphery, away from the eyes of the defender, he's managed to walk into the penalty box without even getting into a physical altercation with the number 5, without having too much trouble. So now he's already closed out the distance between him and the goalkeeper. The number 2 obviously can clearly see him, but the number 2 can't get close to him because Gordon is right behind him, and he's leaving that space for Gordon as well, just from that movement alone. The ball's about to get played in. You're gonna see Osuna now shift from one leg to the other. It looks like he's gonna go forward, and then he goes to the left, because all he wants to do is get between that space between him and the goalkeeper, and he keeps the defender guessing. He shifts it there. He's about to do it, and then bang, it gets in, and it's that space between him and the keeper that he's trying to get into now. Yes, people will say Lacroix missed it, but I think Lacroix partly missed this because he's constantly having to look over his shoulder to look for Osuna. And Osuna gets into that goal. Yes, it wasn't the prettiest of finishes, but this is what I mean in terms of box movement. Now, Mr. Voltemada, this is what I'm saying in terms of what I think Eddie Howe wants to get into his. What Eddie Howe wants to get into his kind of armory as a striker. I'm about to show you guys an elite vert. That was Osuna just making his level of box movement. I'm about to show you elite box movement, right? To kind of double down on that point. But Tim, is there anything you want to add to that before we get into it?
I think that as well as the defender looking over his shoulder, having to watch Osuna for his movement and combat that, what also helped was that we played those 3 passes first time. So we played around Palace playing first time passes, first time cross. So the defender is not only having to look over his shoulder for Osuna, but he hasn't even got time to contemplate the cross properly because it is first time by Miley. And that's the benefit you get of playing quick forward passes and quick forward crosses, because it catches defenders off guard. You can get it in the corridor of uncertainty. And that was one of the few times we did those quick snappy passes, and it was really good play. And we needed to see more of that, and we didn't.
Exactly. Why not just repeat what you just did, right? Essentially.
It was a great ball from Miley.
Great ball from Miley. I don't know if you saw the news today, Tim, that PSG are looking at him. Yeah, so that's. Oops, sorry. Trying to get. I can't. When I get onto the screen for some reason, I can't see the zoom button. So let me just see what I can do. Here we go. All right. So this is Lewandowski. I don't know who he's playing here, but this is, by the way, in about. This is again them on. Can you see the screen, by the way, Tim?
Yeah.
Right. So Lewandowski. Let me rewind it a little bit here. So this is Barcelona. Lewandowski is here in the middle, by the way, with these two. I think it's Atletico Madrid. I don't know. Like maybe it's the beginning of the game. In about. This is even the fun part. Once the ball gets out, so you're going to see the ball come out to the man on the left, on the wide here. You're going to see about 4 different angles or positions that Lewandowski is going to show movements. You're going to show in the box in a space of about 6 seconds. And this is what I mean about elite box movement. And all I want to ask folks here is: have you seen Voltemada do this? Have you seen Voltemada do this playing for Newcastle? And it's going to, because I think, and this isn't like a criticism or not, what would I say, like me kind of trying to tear apart Voltemada. The point is how to improve, how to get things better, essentially. Because where we have a volume of crosses per game, typically between 15 to 25 crosses, typically about 20 plus crosses in the game. And I hear people constantly saying, which some of it is true, that the crosses in the box, the balls in the box sometimes are not very good. At the same time, though, the quality of a cross depends on the movement of the player as well, because you can have a quality cross, but the movement of the player disguises it. And this is what I mean. I'm going to show you guys in a moment here. I'm going to first play this in real time, and I'm going to slow it down to what I mean. So the ball goes out wide here. I don't know who the number 2 is here. Keep your eye on Lewandowski. And the player. See what you're going to do. This is in about 6 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now that looks as if just there, Lewandowski's so lucky. That was the luckiest goal he's ever scored. But anybody who's watching Lewandowski's movement know that he made his own luck in this game. And this is what I'm going to show you, just to slow it down. Within about 5-6 seconds, he shows about 4 different angles getting into the box. Now, the ball goes out wide. Again, just like you saw earlier, he's trying to get on the periphery or just behind the eye line of the defender himself. So here's one. You can see already. He's already the man on the ball just disguises cross, but what was Lewandowski doing? He was already about to get into that red zone between the goalkeeper and the defender, right on the peripheral defender. He doesn't cross it. Fine. What is it? Does he stand? Does he stand still? Does Lewandowski stand still? No. 2. He's already ready for the cutback. That's the second one within a space of 2 seconds. He disguises it again. What does Lewandowski do? He goes in again. 3 seconds. He shows again another vision, another angle. He goes again in behind the defender this time. The defender at this point has stopped moving. He stopped moving because Lewandowski's movement is just too much at this point. That's 3. He doesn't show it. He doesn't allow himself to. He doesn't shoot. He doesn't cross the ball. The defender, but it doesn't matter because Lewandowski is in the right place at the right time. This is what I mean. When we're talking about elite box movement, right? When we're talking about elite box movement, this is what I'm saying. 1, 2, 3. Again, actually, did you see that double movement? There was a 4th one I forgot about, but this is the double movement here. This is the double movement here. He just missed it here. He made a double movement. This is where the goal. This hit just here. What? Here we go. 1. He's about to do it. Double movement. There. He doesn't cross it. Fine. Whatever. In there. 4. So he shows you 4 different movements in the space of 6 seconds. Elite. So this is what I mean about box movement. So I just wanted to get that out there of what I mean by it. Because even the guy didn't even end up crossing it to Lewandowski.
Yeah.
Right? And we would say he spammed it. He missed it. But Lewandowski made something of it just from his box movement alone. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Tim, before I go to the comments.
I think, yeah, no, I agree that, Voltemada, when he's played up there for us, I think he obviously hasn't had that sort of movement, and Lewandowski, like you say, is like a world-class striker. So a lot of strikers would, not compete with that. But I think Voltemada has struggled as the number 9, if you like, as the spearhead. And I think movement in the box is one of those aspects at times. So I think there is maybe sometimes a black and white, pardon the pun, narrative around Voltemada where either he's the savior up front and he can't do anything wrong, or he's one of the worst signings we've ever made as a striker. I think in terms of performances, the truth I think is somewhere in the middle a lot of the time, because he has been trying to adapt to the Premier League, and I think physically as well, he's been brushed off the ball at times. And obviously he's had 2 defenders around him. So I think there's a bigger picture to that as well. So I think in terms of that movement, again, I go back to, I think his development will be better aided with somebody in front of him who can give more of that type of movement. I know it's a change of formation, so it's a change of style, if you want to say. But I think Voltemada would thrive more in a number 10 than being the... Don't get us wrong, in the future, he could progress then, I think, to be the spearhead up front for whoever it is, hopefully us. But I think for now, I know Wissa was a box player at Brentford, wasn't he? To me, he looked like he had good movement at Brentford.
He's excellent. He's excellent.
Yeah. So if that had worked out, that would have been ideal. But if it's not Wissa, then like I say, Anthony Gordon, or like you say with Asula against Palace, great movement. Could be Asula in front of Voltemada. So I think for me, that's the answer. But I do agree with what you're saying as an overall point, in that, Voltemada has had his struggles this season. He hasn't had a brilliant game every time he's played, but, I think there's different aspects to the whole thing. So, I think it all comes back to me to, I think we need to try him as a number 10. I think ultimately it's a shame, really, that it looks like we're never going to really give that a proper run this season.
Send in your comments, folks. Let us know what you're thinking. I wanted to quickly, I knew I was going to take half an hour on this, but I just wanted to kind of highlight as well the game as well. For me, Tim, I'm going to show us. I know there's been a lot of conversations about tactics. I know there's a few people obviously are saying about lack of energy, and that could, especially in the second half, that could be the case. I didn't see it. I wanted to highlight, though, when I was watching the highlights here, is that for me, and I don't know if you saw this table, Tim, there was someone showed a stat table that Newcastle lead in terms of, I think, individual errors that lead to goals. There's a number of tables that Newcastle are leading at the moment. That's scary.
It's all the wrong ones.
All the wrong ones, but it's fine margin ones, right? We lead. Everyone is well documented. 25 points from Leeds lost, but also the amount of individual errors. Now, for me, the individual error comes here from Livramento. The cross that comes in. I don't know. I'm going to show it to you folks here. So the ball's about to come in here. Just watch Livramento here. There's the number 21. I don't know who's behind him here. I don't know. He's gone to jump for it. You've got to know you're gonna get it. He let me just slow it down. It is slowed down. He doesn't get it, and jeez, he's given the 2 Palace players all the time in the world to get their shot off. What's your thoughts, Tim?
What he could have done instead is get touched. I know what he's thinking, because he's got his man. Is it Mitchell? Yeah, so his man's Mitchell, who the ball goes to, but he's thinking the ball might be going to the 23, I think it is, instead. So I'll stop the ball from getting to him. But what he should have done for me is, okay, go towards that man, but you don't have to dive in. Just get touched tight. Just get touched tight. Yeah, just get your arm out to him. So if the ball goes over both you can then swivel and you're still blocking the goal in front of Mitchell. But because he dives in and jumps, like you say, he's taken himself out of the game then. You didn't need to jump. Just get tucked tight and keep your position. Just jostle away. And I think maybe that's the sort of thing Trippier's, got more nous with. But at the same time, I appreciate Trippier. I mean, there is a talk about a clause in his contract that would trigger a bonus that we don't want to pay. So I don't know if that's why maybe he didn't play. But I think with Trippier, he's maybe he's been caught out as well, hasn't he, defensively at times, unfortunately. So I think I understand that we're in a rock and a hard place because we're having to choose between players who are making a lot of individual errors. You go to the right wing, for example. I think Murphy had a bit of a stinker, but then the alternative is Alanga. To me, I don't really see him doing much better at all. So it's really difficult in that way when you've got players not performing and making all these individual errors. And obviously Botman as well was definitely another one.
And this penalty, this is the last minute of the game. Now, okay, jeez Louise. I can't see if the other Palace player is holding him or not, but this is, I don't know if it's nerves. I don't know what the case is, right?
It's weird, isn't it?
Howe's ended up, it's weird. I think Howe's ended up getting stick for it anyway because I don't know what he's, I don't know. Maybe he was, I can't see him there, but apparently that's what he's done. And he's kept on to it. It's just, you can see, I'm thinking Botman, Voldemort is there. Like Lerma isn't, he's heading away, he's going away from the ball. And I just think it's again I just feel like it's two individual errors again that have undone us. I don't know. Any final thoughts from you on the game, Tim?
I mean, I get that. Eddie Howe, he's on the touchline. He's not the one pulling players down when you don't need to, or diving in when you don't need to. I get that, and I've got sympathy in that respect. I think with Botman there, I can only think that the record of us conceding goals when we have a lead is playing on their minds, and it's leading to panic, to do silly stuff like that, because ordinarily, like you say, there's no danger there. We have bodies back. Even if the ball goes to the Palace player, it's no problem. You just need to hold them up. So to be pulling them back like that tells me that it's panic. And it's panic because the players have in their mind, we're going to concede and lose again once we've taken the lead. So it's a mentality thing. And obviously, maybe you could say Eddie Howe needs to, he's the manager responsible for the mentality as well. But no, I think Botman, I was pleased when Botman and Chow won the team sheet, because I think a lot of Newcastle fans, want to see those two, because we see those two as the future, and we want those two to get an understanding going in the next season as well. And they are really good players on paper. So like you have those thoughts before the game, but then Botman goes and does that, and I really like Botman, and I really want him to prove his fitness, but he's not making it easy for himself, is he? When he's either injured or he's making an error like that. So, I mean, I hope he comes back for the rest of the season, Botman, and puts in top performances, so we get a good idea that maybe we can still rely on him for next season. But we'll see.
I agree. Ches says we looked really flat and lacking energy. The energy spiked after our goal, and I started to see some spark, which made me think it's an issue of confidence. That quickly disappeared as that anticipation of losing from another leading position sunk in. I think it's time for a rebuild around Hall, Miley, and Bruno. The rot has set in everywhere else. I'd keep Ramsey too, absolutely. Connor, God bless you, showing us some love. Connor says, Voldemort at Newcastle has no service from wingers at all. Well, I did show the box movement stuff. So let me know what you think about that, Connor. So for me, I anticipate, if you look at even just on stats alone, Newcastle lead volume of crosses, open play crosses, number one in the league. Also, successful completed crosses, number one in the league. So he's getting, and we're surrounded by Arsenal and Man City, the two top scoring goal teams in the league. So we're in good company. So for me personally, I just think if you're getting that volume of service, the teams around you are doing it and they're getting goals. I just think there's something with the box movement on the strikers. I think Osola's showing it now, and I've been to see, if we can get more from him in this season. Tim, one for you. Ginger Hoskin says, Tim, your man has decided to leave Bournemouth. Now we're gonna that's the next part we're gonna get into. So hold on to that thought in a moment. Because I've got a whole set of slides and conversations and that I'm really, really keen to get Tim's view on it, and you guys especially. So thanks for bringing that up, Ginger Hoskins. Adrian agrees with you, Tim. He says that Big Nick needs a strike partner. Absolutely. Contemplate says, even in Phil and the chat. God bless you, Contemplate. Good to see you. And guys, please do like, share, and subscribe. Incredible chat as always. Ginger Hoskins says, Tim, we are 24 points off post Isak, and Isak levels has shown how isn't up to the job. What's your thoughts on that, Tim?
I think that, we can discuss this, Philip, because I think you still have faith, don't you? Or maybe you don't, I don't know, but based on our last conversation before the post game. But I think again, with a heavy heart, I think the time is right for change, and we can go into more detail as to why, in terms of you're talking about Areola, because he is somebody that I kind of really thought about earlier in the season as somebody who would be a really good successor to Eddie Howe. So obviously there's been development since then with them leaving now Bournemouth and at the end of the season. So I do think that, look, I think Eddie Howe, I don't think he has the solutions, and I think that's in regards to making decisions when it comes to dropping players, making decisions when it comes to freshening things up with tactics, when it comes to substitutions and being proactive. And also, I would say when it comes to younger players, again, this is a conversation we could have, Philip, because I do appreciate that there's no magic wand, and I understand that if the players in the under-21 setup, aren't really doing it, Eddie Howe doesn't want to play players who he deems aren't good enough. I get that.
They beat Man United this week, under 21s and the under 18s as well.
Oh, nice one.
You can see it live on actually Man United's. I don't want to give them views, but it's Newcastle that are playing, and Sean Neave, I think, Sean Neave's got a really good goal. Chipped the goalkeeper. And who else played? Is it Su Young, the Korean lad?
Park. I was just speaking about Park. So did he score? Did he?
I can't remember if I think he got an assist.
Got an assist.
I think he got an assist. Yeah.
Yeah. I was speaking to my brother Peter about him today, and just very quickly, I would say that he showed promise at the start of the season in pre-season, and yes, I understand if he hasn't been doing it by and large for the under 21s. I understand that you want to wait until players smash it at that level and then bring them in, ideally. But I just think he was in his own groove in pre-season. The fact is, he was showing some good signs with the first team in those pre-season games. And while he's in that groove, I just think he would get more potential development even in those 15, 20 minutes as a sub with the first team, in a cup game, for example, than he would over a stretch of under 21 games, potentially. And, if he's just put back in the under 21s and not given a sniff since the pre-season, I think regression could potentially set in. And that's down to him as well. He's responsible for that as well. But I just think that as a manager, Eddie Howe should have been a bit more flexible to strike while the iron's hot. And if a young player's in his groove like that in pre-season and literally playing well with the first team players, give him a few more minutes here and there. And you know what? He might develop a bit more with that exposure. You know, and it's a management. I get that, but I just think he's been a bit too inflexible in that regard.
Well, let us know what you think, folks. Do you reckon Mr. Park should be on the pitch or for the first time getting a few more minutes, or is he? Do you see him cooking on 21s before kind of getting into the first team? Let us know what you think. Connor says Voldemort always has two players on him because opposition know how dangerous he is. So hard to lose two defenders. And I'm guessing you got it in block capital letters because you want to hammer the point. Voldemort is not the first striker to have two defenders on him. You just saw the video that I played. Lewandowski had a couple on him, but they stopped moving because of his movement. That was elite movement. Haaland has it. Everybody else has it. Voldemort doesn't need two players on him at this moment. If you watch him carefully, he just needs one defender on him, and they bully him out the penalty box. That's the reason why he keeps dropping back. As striker, he started doing that. As striker, he started doing that. Voldemort is not leading the line as a striker doing that. Watch Igor Jesus for Brentford. Watch Haaland, how they're leading the line. They don't have to score every time. They just have to be able to lead the line and cause a space in behind them for others to get into. Voldemort doesn't want to do that. Not necessarily doesn't want to do that. I don't know. Isn't able to do that at the moment. I'll take a couple more because I do. This is I say the fun part, but we are. This is. I think folks are gonna like this essentially. It's also played. There was someone. Big up Wobblejog. I just wanted to say, Wobblejog. Hello, Philip in the chat. God bless you, Wobblejog. I see a few folks asking you, are Arsenal going to win the title? I can't remember what you said. You said, and no, we are still winning the league. No one is asking us to win all games remaining, and neither will City. I don't know. Wobblejog. Do you know what? Yeah. I don't know, Tim, if you had a chance to see the City Chelsea game. But I don't know how you can see the City Chelsea game and say they're not going to win all there's no guarantee they're going to win all their games, but boy, do they look good that they might. I'll take one more before I get into it. It's here for months since the West Ham game part. Okay, I think someone agrees with you, Tim. Lion Point says, I've been saying it for months since the West Ham game. Park should be playing with the first team and will provide much more flexibility in the wins compared to Gordon or Murphy. There's one more question I wanted to ask, I think it was asked to me. Question, Philip, how said against Palace we dominated the game from start to finish? Do you agree? No, I didn't see the second half, so I can't comment for the whole game. Maybe Tim, you can, but I think the first half, I think we edged it, and I think the goal showed it. I think both teams were nervous. It wasn't like, when we say dominated, like it wasn't like, we were peppering their goal, they were peppering our goal. I think they had two shots where Ramsdale made two good saves actually. But I think we got into the game more after 10, 15 minutes, started to kind of probe before eventually the goals game. So the first half, I think we edged it. I don't know about dominate, but I think we certainly edged it. But I don't know, Tim, for you as a whole, like, do you agree with how that we dominated the whole game, or we were simply unlucky? What's your thoughts on that?
I know that he said that he thought we were in control. I haven't read all of his comments, but if he said that, then I don't agree that we dominated. I think with the first half, I wasn't. We got the goal, and up until then, I wasn't impressed. And I agree, Philip, in that after the first 10, 15 minutes, we started to probe a bit more. But we weren't really getting close to their goal. We had more possession on the halfway line, our own half at times, but once we would try to go forward, it broke down very easily. And a lot of it was, like you said, nervous passing, slow passing, the opposite of what we saw in that little glimpse when we scored that goal. So I thought second half, we actually did a bit better for periods because we got closer to Palace's goal and we got in situations where we could have got that second. So I think I was more a bit disappointed in a way in the first half. I just thought it was like I say, when you consider the fact that we had that 2-week break, I thought it was such a stale half, and we got that goal, we nicked that goal, if you like. I mean, Palace weren't anything either. You know, it was such a cagey game, and like I say, it wasn't their priority, that game, Palace. But I just thought, once we didn't get that second goal after working some good positions, I think then the last 15 minutes, it's a case of here we go again. I think the players, again, mentality, have it in their minds that this is going to happen again. And yeah, that's where the individual mistakes then creep in, you know?
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. Now, I think this is a part of the show that is going to be very, very interesting. We've had obviously a number of announcements today. A lot of managers are making themselves available. One very interesting manager is Andonai Iriola, Bournemouth's manager. Bournemouth have come out and said it. He's just said it. Fabrizio Romano and others have said it. That, hey, he is leaving Bournemouth this summer. And obviously that's triggered, even before actually leading up to it, but I was going to say it's triggered, obviously, a whole lot of media hype linking him to a number of clubs, including Newcastle United, Man United. There was another team, Atletico Bilbao, who is his like spiritual home, essentially. Is his home, not just a spiritual home, but it's physically, he's a Basque, he's from the Basque region. He is a Bielsa disciple. We're going to talk about that in a moment. And but even leading up to that, there was rumors from the likes of Inter. Now, people don't know if it's real or fake or whatever Inter, but it seems to get a lot more things right than wrong as of recently. And others were saying, and others are making a lot more links in terms of Newcastle contacting Bournemouth around Andonai Iriola. I know, Tim, for instance, you know, obviously you respect the work of Andonai Iriola as well. Now, I see, especially online, for me, a lot of people some few folks are already kind of falling over themselves to say, please, Andonai, which I understand. But I want to, and I'm going to, for the next part of the show, I'm going to, I went through kind of a thought process in terms of not just Andonai, but I actually went into other managers. Now, we're going to start off talking about Andonai, kind of comparing him to Eddie Howe. It's really kind of this isn't meant to be like this ain't like a full scouting report on Andonai. I kind of just wanted to go through a snapshot, a thought process, because obviously Eddie Howe is still very much a manager. Newcastle have said that he's our manager and the plans for him to be here. There's other reports also saying that he's going to be here next year as well, regardless of what media hype are saying. So I wasn't going to go into a full kind of report, but obviously the news itself prompted me to do my own scout report, read other kind of things around Andonai. Obviously, like I said, from the Basque region, Marcos Bielsa, disciple, that high pressing, high intensity. If you guys are complaining about Eddie Howe's playing style, wait till you see Bielsa's. That's what I'm going to say, right? So, just I'll leave that with you there, and then but he started off in Larnaca in I think Cyprus, where I think he won a cup there before. I think he had to leave or got sacked. Took a second division Real Volcano into the first division, led them to like the quarterfinals of Copa del Rey before making it to to Bournemouth, where I think last season he finished 9th. This season he could finish anywhere at the moment in terms of even making it to the top 6. Highly respected, highly renowned. He's been linked, like I said, Newcastle, Man United, but he's also been linked to Fulham and Crystal Palace, that he's actually going to take over from Glasner from Crystal Palace and others as well. So my main thing wasn't to say, the next part of what I want to talk about, Tim, and others here isn't to say necessarily I am making comparisons of Eddie Howe and other managers, but my main thing was to say kind of what my thought process was, going back to the whole Bielsa thing and high intensity. You're going to see from this is that Eddie Howe and Ariola's style of football isn't too dissimilar. This isn't like they're a lot more aligned than they are apart. This isn't like Eddie Howe, Maresca, Eddie Howe, and Pep Guardiola. High pressing, front foot intensity versus possession based, controlled football. Eddie Howe and Areola are in the same camp as Jurgen Klopp, Marcus Bielsa, and everybody else. I mention that to say this. Obviously, on top of what our folks have been saying about Eddie Howe's style of play, affecting players, this, that, and the other, I think Bielsa, he has distinguishing features about his pressing that's different from Howe, but and maybe some of you might think it's enough to kind of enough change. But I went through a process of saying, okay, if the owners are going to change Eddie Howe, why are they going to bring in someone that isn't too dissimilar to him? Why are they not going to, totally change it up? And so that kind of led me on a particular thought process of what they might be thinking of. So in terms of where they're at. So I'm going to kick off with that. But Tim, in terms of, Iriola, I mean, what's your kind of initial thoughts on him before we kind of get into it?
Yeah, I really like him, and I remember last season speaking about him just generally when I was watching them play on TV and saying how impressive that they were. And I think I agree that he is similar in terms of style when you talk about a pressing game, when you talk about a very attacking game. And actually, that is one of the attractions for me, because I think it would be a mistake to go full 180 and get a manager who plays completely different. I think there's something to be said where there's a touch of continuity in there. So what I think is really, really appealing about Iriola is, yes, he plays an attacking, pressing style. And I think, by the way, as a club, Newcastle United, you factor in St James's Park, our crowd. I think that's good for our identity. I want us to play a way where we get the crowd involved. I think different teams have different styles, if you like, or different clubs suit different styles, maybe. I think we suit that, generally speaking. The difference for me, Iriola, is that while he has that style, he also plays with a number 6. You've got Tyler Adams. When he's fit, he does play a number 6 role. Yes, they do concede goals still. Yes, they're not going to be as compact as, say, Crystal Palace, who play 5 at the back. That's always going to be the case if you're an attacking team. But he does try and compensate the attacking style with a number 6 in Tyler Adams. Against Arsenal, Adams wasn't 100% fit, so he had Alex Scott do that role. And Alex Scott moved up the pitch in the second half when Tyler Adams came on the pitch, and Alex Scott ghosted in at the box as the number 8 then, and obviously got the goal. So these for me are really important tweaks that we have in Eddie Howe. It just is not part of his makeup, and that's that I'm not saying Eddie Howe's outlook is quote wrong. I'm sure if Eddie Howe went to another club, it would work. I just think for us, it's went stale and it's not working. And to me, it's clear that Eddie Howe will try to do Plan A better, and his Plan A does not involve playing a Tyler Adams in a number 6 to compensate for this attacking style. He also, Iriola, plays with essentially, he has more support for the striker. So you could say he plays with a number 10. There's a lot of fluidity, but to begin with, it lines up as a 4-2-3-1 a lot of the time. Again, I go back to Voltemada. I think there's a possibility that he would play Voltemada behind a striker, behind, I've forgotten his name now, the striker that they have up top, who has brilliant movement, who holds the ball brilliantly. Who, sorry?
Even Nilsson, I think.
Yeah, that's
Even
Eddie
Nilsson.
Nielsen. Yeah, that's him. And he plays that role, that spearhead role, brilliantly. But he has a lot of support. So that ticks a box. For me, what have we lacked? We've lacked a number 10. Again, Iriola, it's different, but it's the same, but different. He would play, I think, a number 10. I think the fact that he's had to sell 4 of his back 5 at the start of the season, he's had to sell Semenyo halfway through the season. I think there's another player he's had to sell as well. He's had over half of his best players taken away, yet he's still able to go to Arsenal, for example, and outmaneuver them and win, and have Bournemouth sitting in contention for a European place. That, to me, says that his tactics are bulletproof, in that you can pull the rug under his feet, but he's still able to get a tune out of the players that come in and the existing players and get them to play how he wants them to play. That's another massive tick. So they even had an injury crisis last season, in the Cup to St James's, in playoffs off the park, with a massive injury crisis. So again, when you're talking about, a lot of players that we're going to have to be moving around as well in the summer, he's able to adapt to that. I think his talent ID as well. And I know it's a lot of it is Bournemouth system. They'll have scouts in the DOF that's there, I'm sure does a good job, but he gives the okay and signs off on the likes of Ryan, 19 years old, Krupi, French striker, signed, 18 years old last summer. He scored 10 goals in the Premier League. 10 goals for an 18-year-old from France. So Iriola had the judgment to say, no, I trust him. He can do it. And he has. And not all of them will do it. Obviously, you're going to get misses as well, but he has faith in youth. Again, another massive tick. Yeah, and I think in terms of tactics, just to finish off on Iriola, I think what I love about him is he plays it short. He plays really nice football, but he also mixes it up and he goes long. And I don't mean aimless long balls to a striker. He plays long balls, long passes to the wide men, not always with a view to them winning it, but he has a team set up whereby if the opposition win the header, Bournemouth are hunting in packs and they will win that second ball. They win that second ball high up the pitch, and from there, they go for the throat and they press as a team from there. And because they are high up, they're able to suffocate teams. So they bypass the opposition's midfield at times. So they haven't got time to get set. I love that. I love that he's not being brainwashed to an extent to this tippy-tappy in the 6-yard box, which, yes, can work. But when I see managers doing that religiously where it's not working and they refuse to adapt. I see Iriola mixing things up. Again, I think we overplay at times. We don't go for the throat enough at times. Iriola, again, he's like, he's got Swiss Army knife. He's got these things up his sleeve. And I love that philosophy. I want to get back to that. I don't like this outlook and philosophy in football where I think a lot of managers are ignoring principles of play, and Iriola does not do that. So yeah, he's from the Basque region. He knows what it's like at a club where football is the be all end all. That's what Bilbao are like. So for people saying he hasn't managed a level of intensity, yes, he probably hasn't, but I'm confident in saying he would get Newcastle United. And I think in terms of managing in Europe, I would argue that his methods in regards to managing a high overturn of players, managing injuries, his methods are tailor-made for midweek games, because he's very happy to have players coming in and out and still getting a tune out of them and still getting the team playing how he wants them to play. So, yeah, he's my man. I would love it to get him. And I think I do fear we are going to dither and he would go to a top club, do his stuff, and we are sat in a year's time saying, you know what, we could have had him, and now he is what people call a top manager, and he's suddenly unattainable. So yeah, that's my
Well,
thoughts. Long-winded, Philip, but yeah.
well, that's what you're here. That's what you're here. Well, hold on to your hats because there's a lot of things that you mentioned there in terms of like tactics, flexibility, his direct style. It actually links
You're
up
gonna
to some of the
dismantle it.
what folks. No, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna because it adds to what we're because my main thing was okay. If I'm the owners and I go for Iriola because I feel like there's so much similarities with Eddie Howe. What is it that they're thinking of? So it's kind of adds to a lot of what you're saying. Well, the folks are in the chat as well. Where Connor is saying Iriola plays quick possession based football. Connor says yes, and if you look at, for instance, if I think it's up to analysts. A lot of if you look at a lot of stats, PPDA, so press and the amount of passes teams are able to play before you press them and get the ball back off them, you're going to find Newcastle and Bournemouth very, very close to each other. So this is ultimate style of play. James is my only concern. And there's another thing that James said as well that adds on to around. My only concern with this manager is he has not got much experience keeping your team in the top of the table for longer than 5 games, and I haven't seen him carry on this. And this is true. And this is another part of what I was thinking about, what the owners are thinking about. As I mentioned in the slide, is both have very lot of similarities around high pressing, high intensity, and vertical transitions. There's distinguishing parts that Tim talked about as well. Howe has a bit more structure and control. He's had to do that because if you guys remember when we first qualified for the Champions League, the following season, everybody's legs are gone, Achilles are falling off, hamstrings are burst. we had to bring in James Bunsen, and if you see Newcastle's average possession stats have steadily risen up as a result of Newcastle trying to be not less necessarily pressing, but a little bit more controlling games. Iriola's known more for his more chaos and tempo, though I watched his interview today and he doesn't really like the chaos element that people keep on saying. He likes more the organized part that people that he prefers. So just for folks to be aware of that. What I was thinking of was obviously the main criticisms for how, if you're going to get Iriola, and this is what I'm sure the owners will be aware of it, and for the fans, not just Iriola, but if you want a manager like Iriola, and the criticism of Howe is that he can't manage Europe. And this goes back to what James was saying about experience. Iriola has never been to Europe. So I think whoever has a criticism of Howe not managing Europe, my mindset would be already if Oriol is the manager is okay, he's never managed in Europe, therefore he's like a learner driver. I'm gonna have less expectancy for him to be able to manage Europe. It'll be back to what people criticized Howe for, but I'll be me personally, I have more grace for it because I know that Iriola hasn't got it. So I just don't see how. Yeah.
Well, I'll come in on that. So I think my answer to that is, why can't Eddie Howe manage Europe? For me, the reasons why he can't manage Europe is that he lacks the ability to rotate effectively. As an example, this season we had 3 games in 7 days with the Champions League. I think it was one week was in November, I think, or December, and the other was in January, whatever, the next month. So we had 3 games in 7 days on those 2 occasions. On all 3 games, I think I'm right in saying Joe Linton played every game and Jacob Ramsey was fit and ready to play. So again, from Eddie Howe's point of view, it seems like if Joe Linton's fit, Joe Linton plays. You've got a £40 million signing there in Ramsey, ready to come in and rotate at least in one of those games in those 7 days. The fact that you don't do that, in my opinion, it leads to fatigue. It leads to a lack of encouragement as well, I would say, for the likes of Ramsey to really step up. I think it's disheartening maybe if you're not getting a look in at least one of those games. So I think that's one of the reasons why I think Eddie Howe struggles to manage European schedules. I think it's also, you could even say his lack of proactiveness when it comes to substitutions. I think there's times where players play on through knocks, it seems, instead of being ruthless and taking them off. And you could just say generally managing their workloads. And also, I would say a lack of faith in youth, and that for example, the Karabag game, I think even if you don't think Leo Shahar, for example, is the answer, the tie is won. We have won that tie. It's whatever, 8-1 on aggregate. As long as you think Shahar is capable of going on the pitch and not scoring 6 own goals, then for me, you play him at right back for the last 45 minutes and you give Trippier a break. You know, Trippier's 35. He plays most of that game. So again, inevitably, Trippier is going to feel a bit burnt out as the season goes on and gets caught out in games late in the season. You know, that might have nothing to do with the lack of rotation, but in my opinion, looking in from the outside, it might, I think it probably does. So again, these are reasons why I think Eddie Howe struggles with the European schedule. So you go up to Iriola. Now, Iriola, you know, he does play youth. So if we have a Shahar there and we need to give, say, Trippier a 45-minute break, by all accounts, Iriola will be more willing to make that change and compensate more for the schedule. I think in terms of rotation, I think that by all accounts, from what I've heard, he is proactive and he is more open to rotating. The fact that he's had injury crises and he's able to get a tune out of different players during these times kind of ticks that. But I think Iriola, I don't see him being as stuck on certain players, again, as Eddie Howe is. Again, these are reasons why I think we struggle with the European schedule. And yeah, from what I've heard, that he is proactive with substitutions, Iriola, a lot more than Eddie Howe. I mean, I'm just taking against Arsenal what I've seen with my own eyes. He was proactive then in that game. So for me, you've got to look, the devil's in the detail. I think it's very easy to look at the surface level and look at these things and make judgments that way. And also, you know, you look at Bournemouth and you say, well, what's he done? You know, what success has he had? I think success is comparative to the environment that you're in. And my word, when you look at that environment and look at what he's had to deal with, then he certainly has been a success. So I think his methods, I think, are a lot more likely to be effective when managing European schedule. And that is certainly better in my eyes than a manager who to me isn't capable so far. Again, I say it with a heavy heart, but I think he's kind of stuck in his principles that are not conducive to managing European games. You're muted, Philip.
Oh, I'm going to push. You're going to let me talk. I was going to say we've got 8 more slides of this, Tim. So
no, sorry, but yeah.
Let it. Don't worry, I've got you covered. There's a lot more to come here. So just let it marinate a lot more. I would say this though. I'm going to push back. He does rotate, and the minutes prove that. Our squad depth isn't big enough. Iriola, we can assume is going to be proactive and rotate, but we don't know. I'd also remind folks that Iriola got knocked out in the 3rd round and 4th round of this FA Cup in this season. And that kind of highlights to you just how that is. If there's an example of how he handles competitions, that is it. He didn't do much better in the previous seasons either. So to compare his experience to Eddie Howe, who's won a trophy, who on multiple seasons has been to 2 finals, multiple semi-finals, has gone to the last 16 of the Champions League, has finished 7th and twice in the Champions League qualifications. Eddie Howe's form and profile absolutely towers over anything that Iriola has done. And he's done it with a squad where for 3 windows straight, 18 months, he hasn't been able to buy a first-team player. Iriola is, in that sense at the moment, is a hypothesis, is a theory. We hope that he can do that. His experience, we just don't know just yet. But I don't want to go too far into it. But that's where my mindset was. Let's go. But it was more in terms of, okay, if the owners, if they do hire Iriola, and I've said all of this, why have they done it essentially? So my overall take on it was that they're still going to face the same problems with Iriola around Europe and Premier League because he lacks that he lacks that experience. Contemplate says that this thumbnail is hilarious. Thank you, sir. Right. So what if Iriola joins Newcastle? So the positives are, it says, I don't know why I got Alexander Isak there, but it's meant to be Voltemada, Gordon, transition, heavier attack improves. That's if Voltemada, that's if Gordon is still there, essentially. Negatives though, midfield lacks control. You're gonna have the same thing that everybody's talking about. We don't have control. You're gonna get the same thing with Iriola. Same low block issues, right? Iriola doesn't face low blocks as much as Eddie Howe does. And with his high pressing, high intensity style, and now at a bigger club, those low block issues aren't going to go away, essentially. So we don't have, I guess, a sample to see how he will do in those type of situations, right? Physical load increases. So, as I mentioned earlier, Iriola is the disciple of Bielsa. He's going to put even a higher workload than what Eddie Howe is actually doing because that's his style of football. Now, there is a thing to say that he's probably going to adapt. He's going to have to adapt. I think that's the part we're talking about. And we'll talk about it. But there isn't, if the criticisms are of how he doesn't rotate, he plays the same way, it's intense, he wants athletes. This is exactly what Iriola wants, right? So I think the same things we're criticizing Howe for is what Iriola is going to bring. Either way, if it's Iriola, I'll still back him. I'll still support him is what I'm saying. But in my mind, I'll have a lot more grace. So my expectation for Iriola isn't he takes over, all of a sudden, we're going to zoom up the Premier League. We're going to zoom up the Champions League. We're going to, I think we're going to have to go have a lot more grace in terms of that. And I was saying, can he adapt? The same thing for Howe's is that Howes doesn't adapt. I disagree with that. I think it does adapt. He does change things around. I don't think it's always noticed. I think the thing last year, for instance, when on a 9-game winning streak, it's because he adapted and changed the team. In fact, when I've debated it with people, people don't want to give him any credit that he came to it by accident. That's the I'm like, geez, what can you do? So anything bad is by design. Anything good is by accident. But that's what we're kind of at. Big up United TV. Big up Rich here. Just reconnected with our new account guy, folks. Rich runs a fantastic channel. He's a ardent Man United fan, but don't hold that against him. He also does a lot of other football content, but he's calm, measured, phenomenal content creator, folks. I do encourage you guys to get on it as well. Connor says Iriola wants flair players and not athletes. If you read the scouting reports on him, his style of football and what he does is a lot of athletes. Marcus Tavernier is an athlete. Tyler Adams is an athlete. Eva Nielsen is an athlete. Most of his squads are all, and there's nothing wrong with being an athlete. They're still creative players and people of that nature, but there's just too many. I think if we're going to the point where we're trying to say he's just that much different from Eddie Howe, he's totally different. I think we're in danger of having a misconception of what Iriola is, in my opinion, anyway. So neither manager are like a strong on control and kind of possession, right? So my concern was, or my thoughts were, okay, so if I again kind of carry on with my thoughts, okay, if they want Iriola, like he sounds very, very similar to Howe in certain aspects as well. So why would they want him essentially? And maybe this goes towards some of what Tim's points are and what you folks are saying in the chat. Because like I thought that there's similar things around intensity, load, and control limitations. So why do they want the same things? Essentially, what I was thinking anyway. And I think that this goes goes to maybe what you were saying about you mentioned like squad rotation and everything else. And I think if we're looking at it from an owner's perspective, right? So I think what the owners are believing is that with a better squad, this model works at an elite level. So if you have more depth, so more quality players in positions, in more positions, and you can have better rotation. Excuse me, and you have high quality players. So essentially, I think if we're looking at it from an owner's perspective, I think they're thinking, and Timmy talked about it on this channel. There's going to be a massive. Like I think there's going to be a very huge summer. I think there's a lot of money going to be spent. A lot of players are going to leave. A lot of players are going to come in. I think the owners are. What I think are saying is that we're going to recruit the players for this style to work, for this rotation for there to be squad rotation. You talked about Bournemouth. If you look at Bournemouth, if you look at Brighton, if you look at Brentford, all these teams have a better recruitment system than what we have, right? Hence why managers can make tactical changes, can if there's injuries or if people say, oh, they sold half their defense, or all the defense. Dejan, Dean Huijsen, Zabani, Kirkes, all left, but they replaced them with Senesi, the other French young player as well. But that's just good recruitment. That's not necessarily an Eddie Howe thing. That's our owner thing. And if anything, that the summer has gone to show that Bournemouth's sporting director didn't do a runner 24 hours before the transfer window opened. He was there and made deals happen. Bournemouth didn't have to wait for someone in Saudi Arabia to approve deals that need to be approved quickly, and then we end up losing them. Hence why, as I was saying before, the decision-making process has now been moved to Tyneside, where the board here are going to be making those decisions as well. So I think, in my personal opinion, going off the basis of where, yes, there's some distinctions in style of play between Iraola and Eddie Howe, but as a whole, I feel like they fit the same family tree or the same philosophy of football, if that makes sense. So what I think is, from the owner's perspective, is that the main reason why they'll go for Iraola rather than a possession-based manager, like you said, Tim, at the beginning, is that there's no point in doing a complete 180. The whole club, the whole infrastructure at the moment is suited to this particular style of football. But what they believe they can do is they've learned from the lessons from the past, i.e. we've got a James Bunce. We're shifting the decision-making of signings to Tyneside. We've got a recruitment team. We've got our finances finally in order. We've got a sporting director. We've got a CEO. We can get all this done now. It's a bit like, I don't know if anybody's got like multiple children, for instance. If you had, people feel like after their first child, they got the second child. All the mistakes they made as parents with the first child, they don't have to make. They think, oh, we're not going to do it with the second child. I almost feel like they've got this mindset of, if they go for an Iraola, I feel like this is the mindset that they've got. Or if there's folks in the chat, I don't know, Tim, are you the older brother or the younger brother?
I'm both, actually, but
yeah.
Technically speaking, anyway.
Technically speaking.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, because I've got other brothers, so I've got my twin brother Peter, and technically speaking, he's 20 minutes older. but I've got other older brothers as well.
You got older brothers,
yeah.
But I'm sure they tell you. I don't know. You tell me, but I'm sure they tell you maybe your parents' approach to you and your twin brother is maybe different to what they got, right? I assume that they'll say, they're more stricter with them than they were with you guys, right?
They haven't. I'll have to ask them, to be honest with you, Philip. I haven't asked that question before, but now you've mentioned it, I think I will have to. I haven't really had that conversation.
Well, my wife, for instance, she's the eldest of her sisters, right? She had all the responsibility, taking them to school, cleaning up. When if there's somebody in trouble, it was her. Whilst the younger sisters were like pampered, essentially. So I'm kind of explaining it this way, where I think,
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? So they're looking at it as going with what you're saying as well, is like, what's the point of getting somebody? We're not going to do a whole 180, change our recruitment, change our infrastructure, change how our academy is playing. Well, this is our philosophy. This is our style of football.
Yeah.
We just need we know what to do now. We've got James Bunce. We've got this and that. So sorry, go on.
Just need to refine it, perhaps.
We just need to refine it. That's exactly it. So I think that they're backing themselves to do that. That's my kind of overall feel about it. So then I said to myself, okay, but does it have to be Iriola? Is there a better version of Iriola out there? Because I agree with Adam Cleary, who essentially said that there isn't many managers who could have made, under the circumstances that we've had this season, with the bad recruitment and everything else, who would have done better than what Eddie Howe's doing now. And even with the managers that could do better, it's not necessarily how much better, right? So I don't think, for instance, Iriola, in the circumstances that we've had this season, with not getting the, the right players in, and with the lacking rotation, all those things that you spoke about, Tim, in terms of like being able to change play. So Bournemouth's recruitment is better than ours. We're just able to get better quality players. I don't think Iriola would make better like, even if he wanted to, I don't think even the tactics that he could employ would get him that much higher. So what's the better version? Like I said, the family tree of like their style of play, Iriola, Howe. It's the likes of Jurgen Klopp. So the young Klopp is like the top of that tree. High intensity, rock and roll, heavy metal football that everybody was talking about. And what obviously Jurgen Klopp is able to harness into his style was the ability to also add control and manage that intensity. And that's what you need the players for. And that's where maybe Eddie Howe struggled. We don't know how Iriola would do that. Maybe some people would say he's a little bit better at that, doing that at this stage as well. So if Iriola can harness that, then I think that makes him and if the owners hired him, my belief is that they must think that he has a higher ceiling, that he's able to do that. That'll be one that kind of my kind of takeaway from it. So what do Newcastle need? Well, what should Newcastle actually do, right? Or kind of what are kind of main concerns? We all love the intensity of our play, but I think we can agree that we need a bit more control and intensity balance, especially because we always compete on multiple fronts: League Cups, FA Cups, Premier League, Europe. We can't do pressure intensity in every game. Can we control it? Squad scalability, more depth, and get the recruitment process right, as well as, which helps us to have the tactical flexibility that folks are talking about it as well. So it's not just about more intensity, more chaos, but it's about being able to control it and harness it essentially. Connor says, disagree. Iriola wouldn't lose 25 points from winning positions. Well, let's see when he plays 50 plus games. Let's see when because remember, you forget that this season he'd gone like several games without a win. I think they've drawn like 15 games this season. I don't think our fan base is that forgiving. We all love him now, but if we're drawing and we're not winning for a couple months straight, I don't think we're that forgiving. Look how we're treating the guy that's just won a trophy for us and we're in the Champions League. How are we going to be with the guy who hasn't won anything? So let's see how he acts. We just don't know how he responds in that type of pressure, in my opinion, anyway. So, that's where the main kind of concerns are. So if we're talking about essentially having a hybrid manager who has the intensity, but also has the control, I was asking, like, what managers do that? The top of that tree is obviously Luis Enrique with PSG. We're not getting Luis Enrique. I wish we got Luis Enrique, right? But we saw his football in live action today, which is phenomenal. Other managers that kind of play a similar style of football but are more attainable for Newcastle. I don't know all of them. I know some of them here. I don't know, Tim, if you know most of them. So we know Ruben Amorim, Man United. Man United fans aren't over enamored of him. In fact, if Richie, you're still here from our resident Man United fan, you let us know your opinion on as a guest. Oh, okay, sorry. Rich, if you could let us know what your opinions of Ruben Amorim, but do you see him as a hybrid manager, i.e., someone who can play with intensity and have control over games? That'd be good to know. There's an Emmanuel Algucio, I've butchered his name here, who I think he manages Real Sociedad. Sebastian Hono, I've heard a little bit more about and going to do a little bit more on, who manages Stuttgart, and Michel Sanchez, who's actually part of the Man City group. So he manages Girona, but they're all part of the Man City group, and they kind of got the same style of football there as well. So they're young, attainable, fairly attainable managers there. So for me personally, this is what I'm talking about. Whoever the manager is that's going to come in, and if Eddie Howe stays or comes in, whatever it is, I'll back them. But from my point of view, if we are going to move on from Eddie Howe, for me, the answer isn't another Eddie Howe or a varied version of Eddie Howe. If the complaint is, there isn't, we need a bit more control in games. We need to manage multiple competitions better. You're going to struggle if you're going to have a manager small Eddie Howe, or you're going to have to you have to get the elite version of Eddie Howe and Areola, which is your Jurgen Klopp's and others, which we're not going to get. Jurgen Klopp's about to manage Real Madrid. The other version is obviously managers that can do both the intensity or the control, as well as the control part of it. We're not going to get Luis Enrique, but we can get the next managers that have the potential to be the next Luis Enrique's. So that's what kind of my mindset is at. For me, and I'll give over the mic to you, Tim, in a moment. For me, the better alternative is to stick with Eddie Howe. Because for me, the main responsibility, part of the responsibility is for the owners. What fixes this for Eddie Howe and for any manager is better recruitment, is better decision, is the decision making process, which has now moved obviously here, like I said, to Tyneside and the board here. We don't have to wait for somebody from Saudi Arabia to give us approval. We can have it here to have greater depth. We've already got James Bunce to help us manage the injuries and everything else. And we can already see how difficult that is because we're playing 50 plus games. We're having to have a reset this. We're having a reset this year anyway. Tons of players are going to leave. Tons of players are going to go. To then change a manager on top of that as well, who's going to have to add the experience of being able to also manage that change on top of that, as well as implement their style. You're going to have to find a manager who has that track record in there, which Areola doesn't have either. So for me, the better version is to stay with Eddie Howe. He's already has the elite qualities, has the experience of that, has won trophies, and has showed it. So otherwise, if we're going to improve on him or try to get go a different direction, but still have the same kind of level of quality and experience, for me, you're looking at the likes of Sebastian Hono, Michel Sanchez, and others. But that's where I'm at. Let me know what you think, Tim, and I'll go to the chat afterwards as well to get you guys' views and feelings about all of this yourselves.
Yeah, I think you talk a lot of sense, by opinion, Philip, and I agree in regards to a lot of what you're saying there, and looking at Areola and what the board will be thinking as well. And I think in regards to the rotation, sort of the cup games, and obviously mentioned that Areola, was knocked out of the cups quite early for Bournemouth, whereas we are getting to the latter stages. It's never a positive on its own to be knocked out of a cup game, but it will be interesting to look at the team selection that he put out in those cup games, because in my opinion, you could argue that he's managing the workload, and he's rotating the side for the cup games with a view of, we can't play the same 11 every game, and we have to rely on the squad. And if they're not good enough, they're not good enough. But I would rather, from his point of view, he's thinking I'd rather give these players a go and hopefully get through, because you can't get through if you get the luck of the draw, etc., with the squad players and make progression that way, rather than burn out the first 11 going deep in cups when you haven't got the squad to ultimately compete on all those fronts in the latter stages. So I would actually say that perhaps there's more realism in Iriola's selections. But it'd be interesting to have a look for the cup games. I think Eddie Howe does have final say with the player recruitment. So I think how conducive he would be to bringing in players who were looked upon as gems from abroad and youngsters as well, and how comfortable he'd be in doing that, I think there's a question mark, because ultimately he does, Eddie Howe, take a long time to bed his signings in, no matter what the age is really, but especially if they're going to be a young player. So I think from the board's point of view, if they want to sign more gems with a view of easing them into the first team and getting them worked into the first team, I think if Eddie Howe takes a long time to give Jacob Ramsey, for example, a 24-year-old who's already played in the Premier League, a lot of time in the training ground before giving him a run of games, then I think there's going to be a lot of cautiousness to trust Eddie Howe to bring in, 19-year-old from Brazil, for example. Obviously, we didn't get Ryan in January. Again, Eddie Howe does have final say, so it'd be interesting to know how that worked in January as to whether we had him as an option to buy. I think when it comes to philosophy, I think I absolutely, I agree in the approach of let's not go for a tiki-taka. Everyone's got their own, there's no right or wrong, really, is there? Everyone's got their own preferences. This is just purely my opinion and what I prefer. I prefer to see attacking, direct football. You look at Maresca, for example, at Chelsea. I think he did a good job at Chelsea, Maresca. I think he did, but his style of football just not my cup of tea. A lot of sideways passes. Yes, it's court-controlled football, but it's a lot of sideways passes that ignores opportunities to hurt teams. Amarin was the same at Man United. You look at him before he went to Man United. It's a very attractive, very sexy resume when you look at, dominates the ball, won the league in Portugal. It looks great, but I think for me, it's not my cup of tea, that style of football. And I think Eddie Howe, I think Iriola would have done better at times this season than Eddie Howe, just purely when I look at the issue of the number 6. There's so many times this season there's been a chasm between our midfield and our defence, because we have players in there in the midfield in a flat 3 where they don't really look over the shoulder. They don't look to see who's running behind. Players number 10s ghosting behind far too often, and Eddie Howe either doesn't want to set them up in a way that combats that enough, or he doesn't pick players who want to combat that and have the defensive instincts to combat that. Whereas again, with Bournemouth, Tyler Adams does do that role very well. That is, I would argue, that is a difference with Bournemouth and Iriola, where I think he does seem to hone in on that defensive side a bit more than Eddie Howe, where we've been so open so many times. And I just think I understand as well what you're saying, Philip, when you say about, who on paper Eddie Howe has achieved more. Absolutely. And Eddie Howe has done a brilliant job, and he should get massive respect from all Newcastle fans, in my opinion. And, there should be a plaque or something for him, at least for what he's done for us. But I think the Eddie Howe of now looks like he might have lost his mojo. Is he burnt out? I think that's a fair question. And I think this Eddie Howe, people look at it with Iriola, for example, as a sideways step, but I don't think it is with this Eddie Howe, because I think he's maybe became a bit too wedded to certain ideas, and I think he looks a bit burnt out, and I think he's not making tough calls. He's allowing likes of Anthony Gordon to dictate where he plays, for example. That goes against principles of being a strong manager and saying, Anthony Gordon, you're playing where I want you to play. If I want you to play right wing, you're going to play right wing. And I think just lastly that the likes of Luis Enrique, like you say, Philip, they are not going to fall in our lap. So I think if we decide that, you know what, we are at a stage now where Eddie Howe's cycle has came to an end and we want to give a golden handshake, we really can't get Luis Enrique. So we have to find the next up and coming gem, if you like, just like with some players, you know. So that's my take.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually adding to what you were saying here, Rich, obviously Man United fan, had an experience with Amorim, says Amorim overly complicated things. We didn't always control matches. I think he was out of his depth, and that's why it's when you're looking for gems, where Amorim was seen as a gem. Remember the stuff that he did at Sporting, being able to topple Benfica was seen as a huge thing. And beating Man City in the Champions League, his kind of intense yet controlled football. But you don't know how these managers are going to do. Someone, I think Connor suggested, around having a foreign manager as well, in which I don't mind. I'm open to. You see me kind of bring up a list there. But there's a risk as well there with all these things. So, but like you said, and I'm in agreement in terms of Eddie Howe does need a rest. He's had 2 summers now. I've got a video clip I was going to show, but I won't. Where he's had to lead the transfer window, not because he wanted to or wanted the control over and everything else. The opposite. He went, like I said, this last summer he was on holiday with his family. He was pulled back from his holiday. There's an interview here. In fact, whilst I'm on it, I'll be a bit extra. Let me show you, so you guys remember. So this is from this pre-season. Right, this is from this. They're in Austria, I think. Can't remember if Isak was there. And the interviewer asks him, "How was your holiday?" Here's what he says.
Then, you're just a sporting director, such a pivotal role at the club. So
let me just rewind that a little bit.
Of the dynamics sort of changing within.
It's a bit further. I thought I was a bit better. Jeez, here we go.
But I feel energized or re-energized and ready to start again. How much were you able to switch off?
Did you hear that? How much were you able to switch off? That's probably quite a difficult summer for that. So let me just get that.
How much were you able to switch off? That's probably quite a difficult summer for that, with everything that was going on behind the scenes. So obviously losing Paul and all of the dynamics sort of changing within. You're just a sporting director, such a pivotal role at the club. So I think there was a lot to pick up. There's been a lot of work for transfer-wise for very little coming action, although we're delighted to get Anthony Elanga in, of course, who's done really well in the first couple of days training. So we're delighted to get him in.
So anybody who's like, I feel like he wanted the control. I don't think that sounds like a man who wanted control over the transfers, in my opinion. But yeah, going back to your point around that, that he's worn out. This is the second. This happened also the summer window before that as well, because obviously we had Dan Ashworth betraying the club, speaking to Man United whilst he's still working for us, and so he had to take over that window as well. Anyway, so that's where it comes to either easy, like you said, easy burn out, and therefore we need to move on, or from my point of view is he needs rest, and we need a sporting director, and the CEO to, well, it's mainly sporting director and the recruitment to do their job. So James says, nope, Ruben don't know much about him. Al Gusil, enjoy watching Sebastian football. Don't know how much about Mitchell Sanchez. Either do I, but I hear good things about him too. Contemplate says, we need someone who has experience in the UCL, not some unproven manager from I remember something about having a manager from unproven manager from Bournemouth as well. He didn't do too badly for us. But I know what you're saying. Connor says the issue people have with Howe is he's an in-game management and being reactive. And on that, Tim, I don't know if that leads to being tired and fatigued. Obviously making changes in the injury time and not seeing the game. I wonder if it adds to that, in my opinion. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that before we go to another comment, but yeah.
Maybe I mean I definitely the in-game management is a problem, and definitely I think he seems burnt out, and I do have sympathy for what he had to put up with in the summer. Absolutely, I take that point completely, and he was massively let down. And yes, I think he's got final say, but I think the club should have been working on those deals a lot quicker, and they would have been if they had a CEO and a DOF. So that was a complete shambles.
Absolutely. Connor says we took a risk on Howe when he came in. Well, we wanted Emery first, and then he said he chickened out. So we shouldn't be scared of taking another risk. Yeah, for me personally, I'm not scared to take a risk. What I want, me personally, is, and I hope I'm kind of putting it across properly, is that we have to get an upgrade rather than a sideways move, in my opinion. And like I was saying, is that me personally, even if we don't get that upgrade and we get an Iriola or I know myself, I know I'll be able to judge Iriola for where he's at. My worry is that from the fan base, if we're criticizing Howe for his intensity or for his lack of rotation or for his style of play or for not managing multiple cup competitions, but then we hire a manager in the likes of Iriola who has no experience in these areas. I'm ready to give him grace in that. I'm ready to lose in a third round of the League Cup because if Iriola hasn't gone further than that, I don't know how the fan base is going to respond to that. So I would want, like, if we're going to go on from Howe, if he's not up for the race, or if he's still up for the race, but we're still going to move on from him, I feel like we need an upgrade for that. Go on, Tim, were you going to say something?
Just that, sorry, it's literally went from my mind. So you were saying...
I'll come back to it if you want.
Yeah, go on, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that, yeah, if we're going to move on to him, generally I want an upgrade. Chevelle says, God bless you, Chevelle. I don't know if it's your first time to the show. Maybe it's my first time mentioning you, but if you've been here before, forgive me, but great to have you on. It's your first time. And please, folks, do remember to like, share, and subscribe. Chevelle says, Marino's jumping to the bookie's favourite. I'm a bit surprised about that, personally. From an outside chance is significant, as this switch in odds is usually due to inside knowledge of things to come. I'm going to ask you, Tim, in a moment about how you feel about Marino. I'll just say my quick views on it is that I hope not. And I feel almost... no, I don't feel that's what I was going to say. I feel like I'm spoilt, but I'm not. This isn't the Marino that led Chelsea to back-to-back Premier Leagues. This isn't the Marino that, won the treble with Inter Milan. This is the Marino that was kicked out of Turkey for his antics with Fenerbahce or whoever he managed. I don't know how long he was with Benfica for.
Is he not still there?
Oh, sorry, not Ben. Is he not? I think he's still there. Why has he been linked to us? He must have left, no? That was my thought. Maybe he's still there. Maybe you're right. He's still there. But
yeah, maybe his contract's short. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So it's not that bad. And if, for instance, to mention playing youth, Marino doesn't play the youth.
Yeah.
He's 30 plus. He doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Don't give him that. Some unknown guy from Brazil is not interested in that. So it's almost like going backwards in my point of view. But I don't know if you wanted to add something quickly on Marino, Tim.
I think the first 6 months would probably be a lot of fun. I get the romantic side of it, with Sir Bobby. I get all that, and you could get swept away with it. And he's obviously one of the biggest names in football. So I understand it from that point of view, but I totally agree with what you're saying in that, long term, honestly, to me, it's not an appointment we should be making. I think he's not the manager that he once was. I think he causes chaos without the rewards that he used to get in the past. And like you say, youth is as far as away from his mind as anything. So we'll talk about signing younger players, bringing through youth. He's not interested in that. And yes, you could say, well, get a year or two out of him, win another trophy. But what will be left by that point? He tips the scales one other way in terms of wanting all the players. I think his destructive, chaotic style, unfortunately, would leave a lot of pieces to be picked up at the end, and I just don't think it's a sensible appointment. I understand the romantic side of it, honestly, I do, and like I say, it would be a lot of fun to begin with. I understand that, but no, honestly, I hope we don't go down that route.
I agree. Contemplates as our current manager from Bournemouth isn't cutting. James says Jose, he might be a brilliant manager that takes the BS, but he's turned very defensive. That's why I think he's the wrong manager for us. I agree. Connor says we need a manager for the next generation of football with fresh ideas. That's exactly it. That would exactly something I want as well. All right, folks. Well, as always, it's been absolutely phenomenal. We did a match reaction to the Palace game. We've covered the highlights of the game, the stats of the game, individual performances, Eddie Howe and everybody else. Disappointing game. I was feeling like Tim and everybody else. I thought with the rest and everything else would see energy, intensity. We'd be going for it, and we got the total opposite, especially in the second half, unfortunately. Then we moved on. We talked about the Eddie Howe's manager and the kind of announcement of Andona Iriola. Would he be the kind of the type of manager to come to Newcastle and do a job here at Newcastle, but also talks about his other managers and the general direction of where Newcastle could go as well. It was really, really good having you on, Tim, as always, and with all the folks in the chat as well. And what I really love is that we're able to have differences, to share those ideas, because at the end of the day, no matter what, whether it's Eddie Howe in, Eddie Howe, whether it's Andona, whether it's Xabi Alonso, whoever comes in, we all want the same thing: Newcastle to win, trophies, all the glory and everything else. It's about, obviously, how we get there is what we're discussing and what we're talking about. I want to big up Tim. Folks, I'm telling you, last 10, 15 minutes, literally, he said yes. And otherwise, it's just been me telling you, you're all wrong. And it's only Eddie Howe. Thankfully, I had some pushback. And everything else. I appreciate
I appreciate you having us on, Philip. And and like you said, it's great to have these conversations, isn't it? And I appreciate, we've got different views and stuff, but it's great to explore these opinions. So, yeah, thanks a lot for having us, mate. Appreciate it.
Where can the folks find you?
And UFC Talk TV on YouTube. So you can find me on there. I'll be on some of those shows. And obviously a lot of debate going on there around the current situation in Newcastle. We're also on DAB radio in the Northeast throughout Newcastle, Gateshead.
Whenever I see clips, it's only Mighty Win that's holding up the flag for Eddie. Is anybody else there, or is it just
No,
he's taking the last stand there, like it's just him?
I know.
I don't know if you see you know those memes where they play that song in the background. I hear your call, and like there's always like the soldier that's like taking the last stand. It's like I feel that's Mighty Win over there.
There's Kev that's on the show, and he's in that camp as well, and. Yeah, and I honestly understand like where people are coming from in that way, and it's like Eddie Howe has been a success, a massive success for us, and you kind of think, like you say, with a break, could he go again with the right structure behind him? You do wonder about that, and you have a lot of goodwill towards him. But yeah, obviously I've outlined why I think it's, for me personally, I think it's time for a change. But yeah, Kev's I think still batting for Eddie, and we'll see what the mighty win says. Maybe at the end of the season when it's all done and dusted, we'll see. But yeah, I think more still leaning the other way, it seems, at the moment.
Incredible. And big up to all the chat. You've been phenomenal throughout the show, as always. And we'll catch up again on Thursday. We'll be doing a match preview for the who played. Ironically, we're playing Bournemouth, and Mr.
Crazy.
Williamson. It's gonna be. Heaven help us. Eddie Howe loses that game. Jeez Louise. But it's going to be incredible doing a match preview for that. Folks, make sure, as always, you look after each other, and God bless you all. Take care.